Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Susan Reyna. I'm here today with John Westkoff from Beacon Therapeutic. For the next 30 minutes, you'll be hearing about the great work that's going on at our Carroll Park High School. It's a live call-in show, so the number is 312-738-1060. And again, my name is Susan Reyna. I'm President and CEO of Beacon Therapeutic. We're a not-for-profit located in the Beverly area. I will put some contact information about us on the overhead. We have 4 different locations: our administrative offices, our homeless services, our Cal Park campus, which houses our high school and junior high school, and our elementary site. Beacon offers a myriad of programs that are really designed to respond to the challenging needs of inner city children and their families. We have a therapeutic day school, that's our elementary site, and our high school. And the services provide an alternative for children K through 12 who need special education services that exceed their local homeschool's capabilities. We also have a full array of homeless services that are really designed to respond to the unique needs of homeless children and families. And the services range from enrolling children into insurance services through CHIPRA program, as well as some specialized services related to helping transition families into permanent supportive housing, working with the most vulnerable families, as well as doing an early Head Start home-based services, and some innovative programs related to young mothers and children, as well as a little intensive outpatient program that's working with children ages 3 to 5 who essentially need specialized services and aren't unable to access regular Head Start and daycare services. We also offer outpatient services, traditional community mental health services, as well as a DCFS specialized clinic. I'll put our contact information on it at the end of the show as well. So again, this is a live call-in show. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to call us. Otherwise, you get to hear us talk for the next 30 minutes. So I'm here today with John Westkoff. He is, I might pronounce your last Westkoff, yes, who is the clinical manager at our high school. And so welcome, John.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you come to Beacon?
Well, my background is when I graduated with my master's, I was in behavioral health hospitals for 5-6 years. And through that process, I actually met some social workers from Beacon and was kind of interested when I was originally going to school. I had considered going into school social work and just kind of interacting with other social workers, but I kept seeing Beacon social workers very involved, calling a lot. And so when I just happened to be browsing on Career Builder, Beacon came up, and I remembered, I've met some people from there. I've heard good things about the agency, and it just seemed like it was time for a switch. So that was how I kind of came to Beacon.
Their loss is our gain. So I understand, one thing that's unique about Beacon is that we always, of course, we're approved by Illinois State Board of Ed as well as North Central Association, but we really try to balance strong academics with strong clinical. So, your partner in running the high school is a principal. Tell me a little bit about your role as the clinical manager. How does the clinical manager function within a school setting?
I was pleasantly surprised when I came to see the synergy between the clinical manager and the principal. Ultimately, my now good friend Dr. Gross, she's the boss. I keep telling her that, but no, she definitely makes it a collaborative effort. I guess you could call me the vice principal of sorts, but that's how I feel. Most days that she trusts my clinical knowledge and the clinical team in general, not just myself. But at the same time, we're able to work together because, like you said, it's important and it's everyone holds that in high value, the clinical part as well as the academic. So
tell me a little bit about the kids because, again, when you think of a school, you just think of, regular, maybe special ed kids and so on. But what makes Beacon's kids unique and why do they need that kind of programming that Beacon offers?
A lot of the kids that come to Beacon have had a tough academic career. But also they've been through intense trauma, other issues that have caused them to have emotional issues. It could be, a genetic mental health disorder. It could be, like I said, trauma, things like that. So there's a lot of things that get in the way of them getting their academics. So without a lot of support, they're not going to get what they need academically. So Beacon provides them, what they need to make it through an academic day and ultimately reach graduation.
And what kind of programming do the kids benefit from?
We have social work services. Most high schools would have, one social worker for a couple hundred students. We have, 3 and myself, for 50 to 60 students. So they get a lot of therapeutic intervention. We have groups, we have social outings, we have vocational programs. We have a lot of different services that can help the kids.
And we'll talk about vocational services in a little bit. But I know in terms of academics, they do access all the traditional curriculum. So they have math, science, language, social studies, geography, all those traditional academics. But what makes it unique, I also understand, is that that curriculum is adapted to really be able to reach the children where they're at, where the students are at.
Absolutely. We push the academic standards. I know, especially the Dr. Gross and the staff, that they've really pushed to bring up the academic standards so that they'll get what they would if they were at a quote unquote regular high school. They may not always get through all the curriculum, but we're going to offer it to them, because our kids, they go at a different pace. Like you said, you may have 5 10th graders in a room, but one reads at a 6th grade level, one reads at a 12th, one reads at a 9th. So you have to adjust, you have to individualize it, but we're going to try to get them as much of the regular curriculum that they would get at again, a regular high school.
And how do the kids come to Beacon? What's the eligibility for them to enroll in Beacon?
All of our kids have an individualized education plan. They've all been referred through an outside source, a home district, whether it's suburban or most of our kids come from Chicago Public Schools. They've had some sort of series of events. It's hard to explain, in a short show, but they've had a series of interventions put in place at their regular school, and it's just been deemed that they can't meet their needs there. So they reach out to a private school like ourselves and ask that they implement their IEP there.
And then how long are the kids able to stay at the high school?
They can stay indefinitely. A lot of our kids graduate, and under federal law, they can stay up till they're 22 years of age. If there's reasons that they need to stay, whether it be they're behind on credits or socially, emotionally, they could use more help, or vocationally, they could use more help before they transition out. So they can stay up to 22, but we evaluate at least every year for reintegration. So it could be, that they're there for 6 months to a year. It could be that they're there 4 or 5 years, getting their full diploma through Beacon. So each kid, it just really depends on the situation.
And then where do the kids go when they graduate? Or when they finish Beacon? Clearly, some go back to their regular home school. But where do some of the other kids go?
A lot of our kids, we have a very high rate of getting kids involved in post-secondary, whether it be education or job programming through channels like Doors. So we try to get, if the kids graduate or they're going beyond high school, we try to get as many kids as possible involved in some sort of post-secondary. But those kids who are able to do well at Beacon and behaviorally they're able to reach their goals, they can transition back to their regular school. And that just depends on where they live.
So tell me a little bit about the vocational program. You mentioned it earlier. What kind of vocational opportunities are available to the kids? And as you're doing that, I'm going to put some pictures on of some of our kids.
Okay.
What are some of the vocational opportunities that are available to our kids?
We have a partnership with the local nursing home. Our kids really enjoy working with the elderly persons who reside there. We have a partnership with the local park district. I think we had Mr. Shaw on the show last week.
And look at that, perfect timing. That's the gym.
There you go. He's a great guy. And we have a couple kids working there. We also have a kid right now working at a local diner. So we have really our vocational program, if I can name drop, Ms. Patterson and Ms. Elliott have really strived to advance that program. We've had a partnership with the local motel in the past too that we're trying to reinvigorate. So we're always trying to look at different ways. They also work at the school though. I forgot to mention that we have a lot of staff that go way beyond their job duties in helping the kids learn lunchroom detail, maintenance, office work, all those kind of things. And they can do that at our location at Calumet Park. They can go over to the Longwood Elementary site. We try to think outside the box in that regard.
Yeah, and as I understand it, it's kind of a progression, right? So clearly kids that, are very independent will go into the community and get those kinds of community placements. But kids that need, a high degree of supervision and maybe aren't ready, they can start off with some of the in building vocational services, and then they transition out. And I know some of that's funded through doors, so they do get a stipend, as I understand. So that kind of helps them learn the ins and outs of submitting a timesheet, doing what they need to do as a regular job. And I know that would be really important. And it's an incentive, obviously, if they're getting paid, which
Sure.
is really important.
Sure.
What are some of the other, Beacon, I know we've talked a lot in the past about our philosophy of care. Can you describe a little bit about the philosophy of care, and how does that get reflected in the work that we do at the high school?
Well, I think if you wanted to quickly kind of summarize, Beacon is about helping persons who've been at a disadvantage have a better outcome with their life. And I think that that's reflected in the high school, particularly. You're trying to take kids, again, who maybe academically have really struggled, or for whatever reason, they've been kind of bruised, kind of way to put it, by, their homeschool, or as they've gone through the educational system, they just haven't got what they needed. And we're trying to help them, change that course. We're trying to help them reach their goals, which for most of our kids is graduation. And I think that coincides with what Beacon is all about. You're taking persons who've had trauma history, who've had, whatever difficulties, like I said, mental health issues, all kinds of those things, and help them build something out of, what was a disadvantage at the beginning, I guess.
I know one of the things that we really struggle with is not just working with the children, but working with the families. And when you get to high school, that's very different, because families maybe aren't as involved. Are there certain things that we've learned in trying to engage families of our high school and junior high kids that would be helpful in terms of understanding how we work with kids?
I think what we've learned, at least, myself from my background, and I can tell with a lot of the staff I've worked with, is that, taking a non-judgmental approach, not assuming that people don't care, but that people don't maybe have the resources or the knowledge, and you can be a person that can help them, change that. So not giving up on a family or a student that is really struggling.
And I think that's, that's in understanding stages of change and meeting people where they are. I think clearly being non-judgmental is really important. And I think one thing that I've learned, if nothing else, working with young adults, which is, of course, our adolescents, is that many times it's time for them to be empowered themselves to make their own choices and their own decisions, and being able to realize they have the resiliency within themselves to be able to change their course or make the decisions. Because in the end, when you're getting kids that are 17, 18, at some point they need to start stepping up and doing things for themselves, which I think we find with a lot of the kids, which is really important. Can you relay maybe a success story or something that, one of the kids that you feel really kind of embodies what we've done, since you've been at Beacon?
Yeah, I've only been there about 10, 11 months now.
Yeah, that's all. I thought it was longer. Okay.
But I've definitely, a big experience for me was seeing my first graduation this year, and hearing the stories of where kids have come. Again, obviously without naming names, we had several kids where, a few years ago, we may not have thought they would make it to that stage, whether that meant that they might be, incarcerated, or, a victim of violence in the community, or just, have given up on school altogether. There was a lot of barriers they had in the way. So it was a really heartwarming experience for me to hear the stories and to see how excited the kids were, and to hear them, they come up and give their speeches afterwards. They allow the kids to kind of say thanks to the staff. It just was a very nice experience. I've had some successes individually with kids. I feel like we've had, when I started back in December, I took over a caseload for a therapist who was very liked, and I had some big shoes to fill, and I feel like at least I can name a few kids where they've been able to build rapport and get back on track, and those are the kind of things I've seen over my short time here.
I think the engagement piece is so important, and obviously that's what you're describing. I think what I've really always been impressed with is the level of capacity for our kids to engage when they're in an environment that is non-judgmental and that's supportive, and that will be there despite their ups and downs. Describe perhaps some children being incarcerated, or some of our kids being hospitalized, or some kids fleeing some kind of violence in the home. Us being the consistent entity is so important for them, and that we're going to be there, and being able to support them, And I know some of the things that Beacon does, in particular high school, is really go out of the way to convey that, to convey a safe environment, And I know some of our staff will go out and pick up the kids when they don't come to school. And that's really important because, what would truancy is an issue, a high absenteeism, academic delays. I mean, all those things are challenges for our kids, but I think you're describing a cohesive team that's there to support the kids. Who is made up of this team, and how do you build team when you have so many different professionals working?
It's not easy. You mentioned you have different disciplines. We have behavioral specialists, counselors that help the kids if they're in crisis. We have teachers' assistants. We have, licensed special ed teachers. We have, dean of the students, vocational program, therapists. A lot of people from different backgrounds that, whatever their course of education and life path, they may have a different opinion on what a kid needs to meet their successes. But I mean, I got the feeling right away when I started there, and it was a big part of why I accepted the offer after my interview. I got the feeling that people worked together, that they were able to put aside maybe their personal issues or their opinion to really come to what the student needed. And we have our disagreements, but I feel like we're united in front of the kids. We try to support each other, and then later say, I didn't necessarily agree with you that time. Could maybe I can make the decision next time, or we can kind of give and take. I think it's important.
Sounds like a very large family having to compromise and agree on things, and if nothing else, be on the same page in front of the kids, and be able to go off and sort what would be a different alternative or a different option.
Sure, it's a professional agency, but you're right. It is a family of sorts. You're helping kids, so we kind of get that feeling, like we're we are trying to take a family approach.
I'm going to take put some other pictures on. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that the school faces, or that you faced on a day-to-day basis?
Some of our biggest challenges are some of the things we've mentioned. Kids come from violent neighborhoods. Kids are coming to us, late in the game, so to speak. They've had a lot of difficult things happen to them academically, and they're maybe a little burnt out on the whole system in general. And we're kind of having to try and help them repair that so that they can recover. We get a lot of referrals at the high school when they're in 9th or 10th grade, and they've
Sorry.
That's okay.
It won't go. Well, I think we're stuck on a picture, apparently. Now we're back. Sorry.
That's okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I think in terms of having kids make up, because I know that, the importance of having credits when they're 18 years old and they come to us and they have 1 or 2 credits, that's next to impossible. So, I mean, are there certain things that we do to help motivate them to keep on coming at that point?
Yeah, we have a lot of incentives. We mentioned earlier the vocational program is a big incentive for the kids to get paid while you're at school, to learn new things while you're there. At the same time, they like that, and they like to feel important. They like to feel like they have a purpose, as we all do. So they like that. We also have a lot of incentive outings. We go into the community. We go to restaurants. We have a sports program, which I think is really big for our kids. Our milieu interventionist, Mr. Gray, is great with the kids, and that really, it really helps a lot of kids. So there's all kinds of different ways that we can help each kid, because some kids might respond to the vocational program, others might respond better to the sports program, some might really connect with their therapist and really come for that. So there's a lot of different ways you can get the kids to engage, and that's key, because you got to get them there if you're going to get them their education.
Well, I know one of the biggest accomplishments for the school has been developing this curriculum, and I'm not sure how much you know the details of it, but clearly the goal with the team that developed the curriculum was to really look at what the standards are and make sure that the curriculum is meaningful for our kids. So teaching Romeo and Juliet, but teaching it in a way that really connects with our kids. And I think that's that's another way to reflect that we're doing what we have to do, but in a way that meets the needs of our kids. So you're describing the sports program and the vocational program. I know the other thing is like they get to go to prom. So it's a lot of the normalizing kinds of things that, regular ed kids go to. But I know the prom is always such, and I don't know, have you been at the prom yet or no?
I did not go this year, no.
Okay. So, I mean, I think it's a regular prom. It's at the Drake, and it's actually quite fancy. But it really gives our kids the opportunity to experience what, regular kids experience, but in a more supportive, highly supervised way, which is really important. And I think that's the way to engage our kids. Now, in terms of, how do the kids get to school? I mean, do they take the bus? What do they do? How do they get there?
We have a few kids who take CTA. I mean, that's dependent on, what their guardian says and how, mature the kid is and if they're able to. I mean, sometimes we get kids that just, cognitively aren't able to navigate something like that. But most of our kids take specialized transportation. It's usually set up through their home district. So I would say about 80% of our kids, are transported through some sort of bus or van program, depending on how far away they are.
And I know you mentioned it earlier in terms of the ratio of social worker or therapist to student. And social workers have about how many kids that they work with individually?
About 20 to 25.
Okay. And then I know each classroom, it's very small, so it's a highly structured. So there's about 10 kids, and there's a certified teacher and a teacher assistant. And then you describe these other specialties. So you describe nursing. What are some of the nursing, social work, some speech and language if need be?
Yep, we can provide all those services. We service a lot of kids with emotional disabilities. That would be 90% of our kids come for those reasons. But we can service persons with any disability under an individualized education plan. So, if, we have nursing services, we have occupational therapy, speech therapy, all those kind of things can be brought in as well.
And it fulfills the requirements for Illinois State Board of Ed and North Central Association. So not only are the children able, if they graduate from Beacon, they're able to get their diplomas from their home school district, but also from Beacon, which I know is really important.
Right.
How would you, when people talk about impacts and measures, are there certain things that the therapists at the school use to measure impact or measure progress?
We have a lot of academic tests that we give, measuring reading comprehension or other academic goals. We also we try to measure, like I said, we track kids after they reintegrate or after they graduate to see those successful outcomes. So we have different ways that we can kind of track the kids while they're in school, and then post-school, like I said, if they reintegrate back to the regular school or they graduate from us.
And I know the biggest thing is, you mentioned it earlier, in terms of the IEP and the annual review of that. And there's very specific goals related to their social emotional functioning, their academic functioning. And I know that's, it's the report card, obviously. It's really looking at how well the kids are doing in those things. And I know there's been a real big move for the kids themselves to talk about their progress and then presenting at their meetings. Have you witnessed some of those, and how do the kids do when they have to talk about how they're doing at these meetings?
It's interesting. Sometimes a kid, when you're preparing them for an IEP, you're talking about what they need. They have a lot to say, and then when they get into the meeting, I find that a lot of the kids kind of clam up, and you got to kind of help them with that. But most of our kids are pretty strong self-advocates. They're able to say, I need to see my social worker more often, or I feel like I'm really struggling in math. Could I get some more help with that? But you're right. There's measurable annual goals that are in there as well in every IEP. So we definitely have to meet those standards, but we don't just want to adhere to that piece of paper and not listen to the kid throughout the year if they're struggling or they're behind in something. So you mentioned a while ago about the smaller class sizes. They max out at 10. Most of our classrooms more like 7 or 8 kids. A teacher and a teacher's aide, like I said, the crisis workers, the multiple therapists. So they get a lot of individualized attention. So it's things aren't going to slip through the cracks with us. We're going to have a lot of people coming at them from different angles. So we'll catch them if they're not able to speak for themselves in a meeting. We'll have plenty of people there to say, he could use some more time in this, or he's struggling in English, or things like that.
You mentioned the crisis workers, and we're almost out of time, but I guess I'm wondering, crisis workers, and clearly our children can become very agitated. And I think we talked about it in the past in one of the other shows, in terms of Beacon utilizes a handle with care approach. And, how do you describe that to folks when, handle with care and what we do when kids are in crisis?
Well, I do the intake for all the new students, so I do have to kind of go over this a lot. And basically, I describe it. I've worked in behavioral health hospitals for a long time, and I've used other methods of crisis intervention, but I feel like handle with care is a very safe method for the participant and for the staff. And it's something where it's a last resort. We don't use it, to intimidate the student or as a punishment or anything like that. But I try to describe to the students that it's a safe hold. It's not something that we're going to use to threaten or intimidate you or things like that.
And it's, the way I see it is clearly it adds to this web or the safety net that we try to,
Exactly.
create a very safe setting for our children.
Exactly.
Okay. John, so we're out of time almost. I wanted to thank you for being on the show today. I'm going to put up some quick contact information from our upcoming event that we have. It is our annual holiday supper. The number is 773-298-6441 for tickets and information. This year it's December 6th. It's our 21st annual holiday supper, and all the proceeds go to help our homeless outreach services. Again, John, thank you, and hope you enjoyed watching the show.